Let's touch base on setting up your Zoya workspace and getting all plugged in. I highly recommend setting up the Zoya on a desk where you can easily see the LCD screen and touch all the buttons. That way, you don't have to squint or reach down to your pedal board and try and get everything figured out. It's really a lot easier if it's on a desk because then you can play your guitar, signal right in, and make changes in real time. Okay, so let's talk about the Zoya's inputs and outputs. You can see they're all located here on the back of the pedal, so I'll just turn it around really quick. I'll set the focus so everything's nice and sharp. So the easiest way to connect to the Zoya is to plug your guitar into the left input here, and then plug your amp into the left output. In my case, I'm using the left and the right output to showcase some of the stereo effects that the Zoya has, but that's totally not necessary. Once you are all plugged in, then you can just connect with a normal 9-volt barrel power adapter. It's just has to be center negative. So yeah, once you're all plugged in, the pedal will boot, and it will look like this. To check your signal flow and make sure everything is plugged in correctly, hit this bypass button here on the bottom right until the buttons here turn red. That means that the pedal is bypassed. We can just run a little signal through and make sure that everything is all good to go. Once you confirm that you have signal going through the Zoya, hit the bypass button one more time until the buttons here turn green. That means that the pedal is off bypass and will go through the modules that you set up. You may want to leave your amp on the clean channel as you program the Zoya. This way you can hear all of your programming clearly and explore the Zoya to its full potential. The core logic of the Zoya can be broken down into two parts: placing individual modules and connecting them together. First, let's load an empty patch by turning the silver knob until we reach an empty slot. Once you've reached an empty slot, just press down on the silver knob and it will load that preset slot. Now that we have an empty slot, let's start placing modules. Tap any of the squares on the front of the Zoya to propose a new module. As you can see, this placement is still tentative at this point. By tapping the back button, you can cancel the module placement. So let's begin by placing a module up here in the top left-hand corner. And at this point, we want to take signal in from your guitar. So we're going to scroll up to the top to where it says Interface Modules. I'm going to tap down on the knob. Then we're going to go to Audio Input. Here you can see different options for this module. So I'm going to scroll down to Color, tap in, and then I'm going to switch it to white. There we go. And then go back up to Done and tap in one more time. At this point, the module has been placed. And if you play some signal on your guitar and your pedal is in this green mode, the non-bypass mode, you should see the audio input module up here light up. And then if you want to check the signal further, you can just tap one of the squares and you can see there's some input signal. There we go. So that means that signal is getting into the Zoya. One thing to note here is while we're playing signal, you'll see that both of these, hit the back button, both the right and the left button are both lighting up. And that's because when you're plugged into the left input and you have nothing plugged into the right input, it copies the signal to both sides. And this is just in case, in the future for this preset, if you plug in a keyboard or something else, it'll automatically have the left and the right channel. So that can be something that's a little bit counterintuitive at first, but it makes programming easier later on and makes your patches more compatible with other instruments. So now that we have the input sorted, let's set up the output. It's pretty much the same process. We're going to tap down here to propose a module. We'll go to interface modules, and then instead of audio input, we'll go to audio output. And once again, we'll set the color. Just rotate when you have this setting selected. I like to do white for my inputs and outputs just to keep things organized, but you can choose whatever color scheme you want. And then I'll hit done to confirm the placement. Okay, so now we have our audio input and our audio output. What we want to do here is put an effect in the middle between these two. And so let's start with a hall reverb. This process is the same for placing the module. I think we'll place it here in the middle. Now let's place it here at the top row. And then we're going to scroll down this time to effect modules. And from there, we're going to choose hall reverb. And yeah, we can keep it blue. Hit done. Okay. So real quick, let's go over the anatomy of one of these modules in the Zoia. The first and last squares in a module are usually its inputs and outputs. So if we tap this one, you'll notice that's, left input, right input, and then the last two are left output and right output. And so if you have one of these modules selected and you want to stop selecting it, once again, you can just hit the back button right here. It's the same thing as when you're placing a module before you hit done. You can hit back and it will, prevent you from, it'll undo that placement, that tentative placement. So your back button over here is going to be your best friend. So from here, you'll notice that the first one is the input, the last one is the output, and then these in the middle are the different settings for that particular module. So you can think of that as if this module was an individual guitar pedal, these would be the knobs that you can turn for that specific effect. So now that we have our inputs, our effect, and our outputs, it's time to make some connections. So right now I have the mix selected, so I'm going to hit back to get out of that selection. Okay. And then if I want to make a connection, I want to start with the input where the guitar signal is coming in, and I want to connect to the input of our reverb module. So to make a connection, all you have to do is press down one square and then press down the other square that you want to connect to. You'll see now it's showing that there's a connection between the audio input left and the hall input left. So then let's copy that for the right input. We're going to select the audio input right and then the right input for the reverb. Cool. And there we go. We're all set. So we'll hit back to get out of that connection, to get out of examining that connection. Okay, so now let's try playing a little bit of signal into this effect. There we go. So now you can see over here at the end, these two squares are lighting up because the signal is going from the inputs into the inputs of the reverb all the way through the effect and then outputting right here. So it makes sense now if we want to take the signal out of the reverb module to the outputs, this output module that we have down here at the bottom, we just need to make two more connections. So we'll go to the hall reverb output left, connect that to the left square of this audio output. There we go. And do the same thing here. Take the right output of the reverb and set it to the right output of the audio output module. So now we should have some reverb action going on. So let's say I want to change that reverb effect and make the decay time longer? Well, we know it's going to be one of these modules here in the middle. So you can usually just press around and figure out where the particular parameter is that you want to shift. So here we have the decay time. So we can just turn this decay time knob up, and you can do this in real time, like while you're playing. Cool. And one more thing that we might do to increase the effect of that is to change the mix. So that's how much clean signal is pushed through the output and how much of the reverb affected signal. So let's try turning that up. Now that we have a functioning patch all worked out, let's take a moment to name it and also save it. Doing this will require us to use the functions that are located at the top of the Zoia. So these squares are available for modules, but if you want to access these function buttons, you just hold down the Shift key and then hit another one of them. So before we can rename, we want to hit back so we get out of this, this mix control. And we just see the 3, the preset slot number. Then from there, we'll hold down Shift and then also hit this rename function button at the top. And from there, we can type in, let's try verb. So we can hit Shift for a capital letter and then V, E, R, B. Okay, then from there, you just tap in the knob to confirm that. Cool. And then you also need to hit the save button. So we'll hit Shift and then save. And there we go. So now if we scroll our knob here, you'll notice that preset 3 is named verb. And we can tap that and it will return to the most recently saved version of that patch. If you'd like to make a copy of this preset before moving on, You can do so by making sure that you don't have any of these squares selected. You can do that by hitting the back button. And then you're going to turn the knob here to get to the patch list. And once you're over the patch you want, you just hit Shift and then copy. And then you can decide where you want to place that copy of the preset. And then it wants you to hit Save to confirm, so you're going to hit Shift and then Save. There we go. So now we have a duplicate of that patch right there. And if you're ever working on a version of a patch and you want to save your current progress to a new slot, you can do the same thing. Just select the patch that you're working on and then hit Shift and copy and select a new slot. And what it'll do is it'll make a copy with only the changes that you've made since the last save. So it's sort of like a save as function.